UFC 317 breaking news last night. It was announced that Ilia Topuria is going to be headlining UFC 317. No official announcement from the UFC quite yet, but Ilia Topuria tweeted last night that camp has begun, and multiple MMA sources have claimed that he has a fight booked. So, very exciting news. Um, we obviously knew something was going to happen, considering DDP and Hamzat fight was just pulled. But I don't know if anyone expected Topuria to fill that spot. Will Hamzat still fight on that card? Who knows? But we got an Ilia Topuria fight. Who's it going to be against? Still no news. I'm not quite sure if the UFC really even knows who it's going to be against. But if I had to put my money on it, it's going to be against Charles Oliveira for the undisputed and vacant title. I think that the UFC is going to strip Islam of his belt, which rightfully they should. If you're a champion, you should not be picking and choosing. I want to fight this guy. I don't want to fight this guy. You should just be fighting and defending any challenger that comes to fight for your belt. So I hope that the UFC does indeed strip Islam of his belt if Ilya is the fight to make and he turns it down. Because I think it sets a dangerous precedent if you start letting champs like John Jones and Islam dictate who they're going to fight and when they're going to fight. You're going to have divisions that are held up, like the heavyweight division, which there's not a whole lot of depth in the rankings to begin with, but you've got a champion who has fought 3 times in the last 3 years or 5 years, something crazy like that. And so it's a dangerous precedent to set if you start allowing fighters to have the freedom to dictate, I want to fight this guy, don't want to fight this guy. The UFC is the one that makes these fights, and the fighters should have absolutely no say. Social media and the following that fighters have plays a huge impact, no doubt, in what fights the UFC makes. The bigger the following and the more traction that they see, the better the chance that they're going to make that fight is. But I really hope that the UFC grabs a hold of their nuts and strips Islam of his belt or says you have to fight Ilya. So I really hope that happens. I think a fight with Ilya Islam would be like a super fight. That's the one that everyone wants to see. It's the one that, especially after Islam looking like he wants to dodge Ilya, that's the one that everyone wants to see. But gosh, Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria, that's a fun fight. Fun fight. So is Justin Gaethje. I don't think Justin Gaethje would be fighting for the title though. Um, Again, even if Islam does vacate and he's not the one that fights Topuria, this still leaves the lightweight division in a weird spot. It just does. Um, but great news. We've had nothing but shitty news all week from the UFC. I'm not really quite sure. My webcam's fucking up again. I'm not really quite sure how much more bad news we could get this week. So thankfully, we got a little bit of good news amidst the absolute shitstorm of bad news that we've had recently. Speaking of bad news, obviously we all knew DDP was out from his fight with Hamzat due to an injury, but none of us really knew the extent of that injury. But sources close to DDP's camp are saying that it's a fractured shin, which is not a easy injury to come back from. It's not just they broke a finger, they broke their hand in camp, or something along those lines. That's a pretty devastating injury. I'm sure rehab is going to be extensive. I really hope that it's not. I mean, even if you don't like the guy, regardless if you like a fighter or not, it's never fun to see someone get hurt, especially to this extent. Really hope that this isn't true, but I mean that's a really really shitty thing. How do you? That's so weird. He must have been. What was he not wearing shin pads while he was sparring low kicks, or was he just sparring and one of his partners checked a low kick? I'd be interested to see how that came about, because usually when you're sparring, you know, you have shin pads on if you're really gonna be sparring. Not saying that like completely negates your ability to have get an injury like this, but interesting. It'll honestly, when it does come out as to what his injury was confirmed, um, obviously we'll know much more of how long he's going to be out. But really shitty, really shitty. In other news, so I think this is David Goggins, in my opinion, is pretty cringy. Motivationally, yeah, he helps people out and whatever, but he doesn't. I don't know. I've just always thought he was cringy. Like, it's great that he turned his life around and he's helping other people, but it's just goofy to see him getting mingling with fighters. You saw it with Tony Ferguson. Everyone was like, "Oh, Tony's got David in his corner. He's gonna come out a different guy," and ended up getting his ass beat that fight. Um, so it's not like training with David Goggins is going to improve your skill, and I don't really think he's gonna. He might provide some mental nuggets to some of these fighters that, hey, here's how to prepare for this, or if you want to suffer, do this. But it's funny to see David Goggins around fighters and kind of talking like he knows what's going on. But either way, uh, Izzy is caught saying here that he wants to run it back with Strickland, which I'm cool with. I mean, he got old, dogged in that first fight. I think Strickland was fighting the fight of his life, had a great performance, but Izzy wants to run it back, which is a great fight. I don't mind that fight at all. Um, Based off of this section here, we're probably, if this fight happens, Izzy always has cringy press conferences. Like, he has all of his responses scripted in his head, trying to sound like a, anime character, which to each his own. But from this section here, the presser is gonna be wild. We've seen Strickland get super emotional during pressers. Izzy starts bringing up this whole inner child bullying thing. I could see Strickland really, really coming unhinged. Honestly, I'm here for it. Makes for a fucking great presser. Do I think that this fight goes any different the second time around? It depends what Izzy shows up. You know, Izzy's coming off of a knockout from Imavov. He's lost to Strickland. He's lost to DDP. So he's not having the best last few years. You know, he went from mauling everyone and being the top dog for a while, and then now he's he's trying to run things back with Strickland and get back on the horse. So it makes sense for him. I think out of everyone in the top 5 in middleweight, I think your best shot of getting yourself back into title contention is probably Strickland, because he's number 2, and I would assume that Imavov is going to fight Hamzat now that we know that Dricus is probably going to be out for an extended period of time. They're probably going to vacate the belt or strip it, however you want to, whatever word you want to use. And then they'll probably, if they don't have their heads up their asses, they should make Imavov versus Hamzat Chimaev. This the whole story changed when the extent of DDP's injury comes out, and when it's actually confirmed, it will solidify what happens next. But if it truly is going to be 7 months plus before Dracus is back fighting, they should vacate the belt, and that fight of Hamzat versus Kaio, number 3 versus number 6, should not be for the vacant interim belt. It shouldn't be. It should be Hamzat versus Imavov. So now that they've got Ilia Topuria fighting at 317 and headlining it allegedly, the UFC should take a step back and go, okay, we really want to keep Hamzat on this fight card. If Imavov can fight on June 28th, then great. But if not, they should schedule Imavov and Chimaev for the vacant belt, the interim belt, until Dracus comes back. And then whoever wins that fight fights Dracus. But for Izzy, I think Sean makes the most sense. Sean lost to DDP. Israel lost to DDP. Israel lost to Sean. Sean's trying to get back, or Izzy's trying to get back into title contention, and he needs with his background and how dominant he was, all he needs is one good win. If he gets in there and finishes Sean Strickland, UFC is going to feed him another title shot. He's earned that. He's the middleweight GOAT outside of Anderson Silva, but he's the middleweight GOAT. So I think that fight makes a lot of sense for Izzy, and it will be something that sets up a Sean Strickland Izzy 3 if some weird shit happens. If Izzy wins, then they're 1-1. Do people want to see an Izzy Strickland third fight? Maybe. Depends how the second fight goes. The first fight was fun. I don't think anybody expected Strickland to perform in the way that he did. So if he comes out again and puts on another fight like that, and Izzy edges out the win or knocks him out or whatever, and that sets up a trilogy. So interesting stuff. We got truly that the extent of Dricus's injury is going to dictate a lot, I think, of how the co-main event of 317 plays out. Is Hamzat going to be included, or are they just going to take him off that card completely? Who knows? I think, 6 weeks out, they're probably not going to take him off of that fight card. It's possible, but I think with all the bad news in the last week or two, I think that taking him off of that 317 card would do more harm than good, even though for the greater good, it would be the best option, because then you make the fight that makes sense, which is Imavov and Chimaev. So I hope that it is confirmed here soon the extent of his injury, so that they can get this sorted out, especially with 317 being so close. But we'll see. Moving on. Something that nobody asked for, but here we are in 2025 revisiting this. So, not even, 24 hours before all this pops off, Conor McGregor is saying, I will only come back to the UFC for a stadium fight, which Dana White has pretty much explicitly always said, we are not going to do a stadium fight because we cannot control for the weather. He doesn't need to. There's not a world where Dana has to do a stadium fight. So Conor McGregor is saying the only way I'm coming back to the UFC is if I can fight in a stadium. And then you got Michael Chandler, who just got his ass beat by Patty, and likely knows that his time in the top 5 and top 10 are over with. I think he knows this now. So do you have the recipe for a super fight on the magnitude of like Floyd versus McGregor? I don't think so. I know so. Michael Chandler is a big draw and a big name. And yeah, these guys have prior beef, and they were supposed to fight 2 years ago, and Michael Chandler took a year or two off waiting for McGregor. But I don't think that Chandler versus McGregor is a big enough fight to sell out a stadium. And even if it is, I don't think that Dana White goes through all that trouble to put on a stadium show just for Conor McGregor. When was let's see here. Da, 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 da. Can I search for Conor here? Yeah, of course I can. So that fight with Dustin when he broke his leg was in 2021. So it's been a long time since he's fought. And I just don't think that Dana White is like chomping at the bits to book a McGregor fight. Like, if it happens, great. But the sport has moved on, and they have proved that they don't need Conor McGregor to sell out their shows. He did what they needed him to do. He blew the sport up to proportions that no one ever expected, but they've moved on without him. There is no need for Conor McGregor. So these two touting on Twitter, I really don't think it's going to happen. They're just stirring the fucking pot, getting the fans riled up, knowing probably damn well that it's not going to happen. But I mean, how many times have we seen this? And it's weird how us MMA fans work, honestly. Because if it were anyone else, you've got Conor McGregor, who hasn't fought in 4 years and is and 2 in his last 3 fights, or 1 in, not, just kidding. He's way worse than that. 1 and, why don't they have a win there? It's weird that they don't have win right there. But his last win was against Donald Cerrone, so he's 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 1 and 3 in his last 4. Okay, so Michael Chandler is what, 2 and 5 in his UFC career. So we got 2 guys that are huge draws, big names, kind of out of their prime, on the decline. I'll say it. If anyone else doesn't want to, I'll say it. They're both past their prime, well past it. But if these were anyone else, no one would want to see them fight. They've won 3 fights in the last fucking 5 years. So what do we want to see? We want to see 2 guys that, one that hasn't fought in 4 years and has been partying like a madman, and one that's been in the UFC just getting his face battered in by everyone except for a shell of Tony Ferguson and Dan Hooker before he became Dan Hooker 2.0 with all his tattoos and beating the shit out of everybody. So like 3 fights combined win in the last 5 years, and we want to see these 2 fight for what? And it makes sense that these 2 would fight each other now because they know that they both cannot beat anyone in the top 15 in the lightweight division or the middleweight division. Or excuse me, welterweight at 170. Like, they both know that their time is done, especially after the absolute beating that Michael Chandler took from Paddy Pimblett at UFC 316. Like, or 14, excuse me, last weekend. Like that, he knows. And Conor McGregor does too. That's why he hasn't come back. If he was truly competitive and really wanted to come back to the UFC and fight at a high level, he would have already. But he's got more important shit to do. He's got an expensive lifestyle. So he's focusing in other areas, which is fine. But don't be taunting the UFC fans because you know we're a gullible bunch. And as many casuals that watch this sport, this gets a lot of people riled up. A lot of people. So, honestly and selfishly, I hope that this fight doesn't happen because it's for what? Like, both guys would likely retire after that fight. But biggest news of the day is that we got Ilia Topuria fighting at UFC 317. Who's it going to be against? Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev, Gaethje? Probably not. I'm thinking it's going to be against Charles Oliveira. I think that is the fight that makes sense. Oliveira is number 1. But UFC does a lot of dumb shit, so it wouldn't surprise me if they made another fight other than the Oliveira fight. But it's going to be shocking, honestly, to see what they do with Islam. I don't think that Islam and his camp are going to grant that fight to Ilia. So I hope that the UFC does the right thing and strips him of his belt and doesn't let the Khabib Dana White privilege get in the way of how the sport should work. So we'll see. More news will likely come out this week. We'll cover it. But we'll have the UFC Kansas City Fight Night predictions out later today or tomorrow. We'll catch you there. Peace.